"No gods or kings, only man." For fans of the Bioshock series, this quote resonates in a unique way when we speak of Bioshock Infinite.
A game that took us soaring through the cloud-covered city of Columbia, immersing us in a narrative so intricate yet so beautiful.
Indeed, Mia, it's that narrative intricacy that we're here to dissect today. Bioshock Infinite's storytelling prowess is exceptional, flawlessly weaving together elements of the game's mechanics and story.
Right you are, Andrew. Thinking back, I remember feeling mesmerized not only by the ethereal city floating in the clouds, but also by the depth presented by the seemingly ordinary in-game objects. Diary scraps, phonograph recordings, they all added new layers to the narrative.
I agree. The attention to detail was staggering, and the game effortlessly embedded complex topics like class struggle and racism into its narrative. And of course, we can't forget the characters. Protagonist Booker DeWitt, alongside the mysterious Elizabeth, had us captivated in their compelling and unraveling storyline.
Yeah, their relationship had such an impact on us. The character development, their struggles, their journey.
The game really elevated our expectations of what a narrative-driven video game could deliver. You could perceive it not just as a game, but an engrossing story, a thrilling journey.
True. And it's to the credit of the game developers that we could feel such a deep emotional connection to Booker, to Elizabeth, to the city of Columbia itself.
"Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt." This quote sets our journey in Bioshock Infinite, right, Mia?
Very true. Deceptively simple, yet it veils an incredible storyline, pulling us into Columbia, a city in the clouds.
Oh, Columbia. The shining city, seemingly utopian, is a daunting dystopia upon closer inspection. Populated by jingoistic denizens, the city is significantly impacted by divisions of class and race.
Exactly. And our hero is thrown into this with one mission: find Elizabeth. That's how it starts. Little does he know that he's stepping into a warping timeline, right?
Spot on. As players, we are initially blindsided by this underlying complexity. Time bends, twists and spins, keeping us unsure of what the reality is. A floating city, a mystical girl, rebel factions, all with layers upon layers of backstory.
The game creators have done a commendable job. Andrew, what fascinated you more, the unparalleled narrative or the complexity of the city?
That's difficult to pin down, Mia. I feel the two are so intricately tied together. The societal and political commentaries wrapped within the confines of a game. It's scarily immersive. Isn't Bioshock Infinite's politically charged backdrop instrumental to the game's narrative?
Certainly, Andrew. The developers threaded a political narrative that unfolds to reveal a racially divided society, mirroring our own historical travesties.
It is indeed a challenging narrative to tackle, and they've done it through the depiction of factions. The founders, led by Comstock, represent the ruling class, promoting xenophobic policies and extreme nationalism, while the Vox Populi, initially symbolizing the exploited lower class, turn into a violent rebel faction. They show both sides of the coin, don't they?
Yes, and crucially, that's where Booker's path intertwines. His journey becomes all the more poignant and challenging navigating these conflicting factions. Even the game mechanics ingeniously offer moral choices that affect the game's story, and indirectly, Columbia's socio-political landscape.
Wasn't there an element of American exceptionalism playing in the narrative too? I remember there being lots of reactionary politics and a cult of personality around the city's leader.
That's a good point, Andrew. Comstock, the self-proclaimed prophet, represents this turn-of-the-century concept that destiny has chosen America to lead the world. It's fascinating how the game exposes the prejudices and perils of such a belief system.
So the political narrative isn't just a backdrop, it's central to understanding Booker's and Elizabeth's journey. Through this deeply political and morally complex narrative, Bioshock Infinite breaks away from the mold of traditional gaming storylines.
You've nailed it, Andrew. The politics of Columbia and its factions act as a catalyst for the dramatic conflicts in the game. It was a brave move on the part of the developers to present such polarizing themes in a video game. The political narrative not only elevates the gaming experience, but it also challenges players to reflect on real-world issues.
Our protagonist, Booker DeWitt, isn't just your average video game character, is he?
No, he isn't. Booker, from the get-go, is depicted as guilt-ridden, racked by his past. A man filled with obvious flaws who is just trying to get by.
He's now thrown into a bizarre floating city and trusted with the mission to find Elizabeth. It feels like an opportunity to leave his past behind, especially his wounded psyche from his time in the Battle of Wounded Knee.
Looking at it from a psychological angle, you can't simply escape from guilt, no matter how far you travel, even to a city in the skies. Booker's character arc subtly projects this struggle. Irrespective of whether they consciously recognize it, players are affected by this narrative and the emotional baggage he carries.
Fair point. He's not just mindlessly shooting, he's a troubled character essentially trying to erase his painful past. This massive task placed upon him to save Elizabeth from Comstock becomes a journey for redemption.
And that's what makes him so relatable. But Andrew, what do you think about the moral choices that are presented to Booker and that the player makes on his behalf? How do these choices weigh on his journey?
It's fascinating how these choices reveal aspects of his character. He's not just a pawn in the player's hands, but an entity with thoughts and feelings. Each decision affects him and the city, layering the narrative with complexity and emotional depth.
And ultimately, these choices, along with his interactions with Elizabeth, redefine him from a man trying to escape his past to a protector, a friend, and a tactical soldier fighting for his redemption and her freedom.
His transformation is undoubtedly one of the highlights of the game. His complexities, internal struggles, and moral dilemmas all speak to a well-crafted character who convincingly exists within the world of Bioshock Infinite.
Booker's character design, Andrew, it's clever, isn't it?
Oh, undoubtedly. The first time I played Bioshock Infinite, I realized they weren't aiming for another stoic, generic game protagonist. There was something human about him. His portrayal, his struggles, all resonated within. From his guilt, his determination, to his flaws, we connect with him because he feels real. He's more than just our avatar in the game. He's a complex character with emotions and consciousness.
Exactly. Not many games replicate this emotional connection between the player and the protagonist. This attachment goes beyond just controlling Booker through the game. We're emotionally involved in his journey, his dilemmas, his transformation. It's an appealing narrative method, don't you think, you?
Definitely, Mia. The use of the first-person narrative lends a particular intimacy to this journey. It's almost like we are Booker while playing. We're not just steering him around Columbia. We're experiencing each emotional high and low, each moral dilemma. It immerses the player effectively, creating genuine empathy. From a player's perspective, it's a brilliant technique.
So it is not just about making choices for him based on some mission objective. We're making decisions that influence his story, his life, his redemption.
Absolutely. And this depth of character makes you feel accountable for every action, every choice. It's a stark difference, full of emotional nuances, compared to standard point-and-shoot gameplay. Booker DeWitt's arc pulls us in, makes us feel for the man, his journey, and ultimately his redemption.
The visuals in Bioshock Infinite, Andrew, they've left a lasting impression on me.
Oh, unquestionably, Mia. The game is jam-packed with visual brilliance that's truly captivating. The floating city of Columbia is a treat for the eyes and a testament to the capability of game artists and designers. But what, according to you, really makes the game's aesthetics stand out?
I think it's the rich color gradations and surrealistic aesthetic that emphasizes the dichotomy between Columbia's apparent idyllic charm and its underlying social unrest. The usage of vivid colors contrasts sharply with the gloomy themes of societal decay, creating a peculiar yet engaging visual atmosphere. Even the character designs are truly distinctive, managing to convey intricate character relationships and narratives through mere visual cues.
I couldn't agree more. By amplifying the visual elements to such extremes, the designers have turned Columbia into a living, breathing entity. The city itself becomes a character. As a player, we can't help but get lost in this beautifully constructed world. What's really impressive is how the art direction complements the narrative.
Yes, and it's not just about how attractive the setting or characters are, it's about what they represent. The visual language of the game tells a story all its own. With every architectural detail, every design choice, the narrative of Columbia unfolds more and more. It's not often you see gameplay and story so seamlessly integrated.
Branching off from what you've been saying, Mia, the design principles at play in Bioshock Infinite are truly something to marvel at. There's an uncanny blend of fantasy and horror, the environments are meticulously detailed, and the character designs are masterfully rendered. Each aspect adds an impressive depth to Columbia's vibrant world.
Absolutely, Andrew. Would you say that the distinct designs of Columbia and its residents helped you establish a deeper connection with the game?
Definitely. It's almost impossible not to resonate with the world because it's been crafted with such passion. I mean, take the songbird, for instance. That mechanical beast with the glowing eyes. It's this unsettling entity, yet it's intricate in its design. And that element of duality is represented throughout the game, both in characters and atmospheres.
Oh, the songbird was an amazing creation, terrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time. I remember the terror I felt when I heard its eerie song approach, and the feeling of puzzlement as I saw its incredibly intricate design. But we also have to appreciate the meticulousness of environmental designs.
Absolutely. The intricacies are mind-boggling. Monuments, buildings, even simple structures like park benches and lampposts, they're all richly detailed and accurately reminiscent of the time period. Yet they're also fantastical as they adhere to the game's alternate universe setting. It's these minute details that deepen the illusion of reality.
True, you don't often find yourself stopping to admire a bench in a video game, but in Bioshock Infinite, you do. Every design aspect, big or small, contributes to the feeling of being a part of the game world. Whether it's the impressive monuments or the chilling enemies like the handyman, they all enhance the player's emotional journey.
Indeed, such attention to design detail correlates with how we perceive Columbia. The animated posters, the music that changes with the environment, even the sound of footsteps on different terrains. It's like the city has a pulse of its own. The vibrancy of Columbia is more than just pretty visuals. It's in the sheer depth of its art and design holistically, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, Bioshock Infinite is the perfect example of how integrated design and narrative create a world that's not only visually mesmerizing, but emotionally captivating. By giving careful attention to these aspects, the game has redefined immersive storytelling. But do you think this can influence other developers to pay more attention to their game's aesthetics?
Given the impact and reception of Bioshock Infinite, I wouldn't be surprised. The game is a testament to how aesthetics go beyond surface-level visuals and actually imbue the narrative and gameplay with added depth and resonance. Bioshock Infinite breaking the mold shook the conventional mechanics of gaming. Instead of the stereotypical guns and grenades, we have vigors in the game. That's a neat twist.
I completely agree. The vigors brought this surreal quality to combat. Flinging crows at enemies or using the possession vigor to literally turn your enemies against each other was just visceral.
And yet not gratuitous. The vigors each had a tactical element to them, like using bucking bronco to suspend enemies in the air, making them easy targets. The system made you think about combat almost like a chess game.
Alongside that, there's the skylines. Worth mentioning is how inventive they are, allowing you to zip across the battlefield and raining bullets from above. Any reflections or perhaps fears, Andrew?
Leaping onto those skylines was always a heart-stopping moment. There's nothing like being propelled through the sky at breakneck speed while shooting at enemies. It's invigorating, but also has solid tactical depth. You can dodge attacks, flank enemies, and gain a whole new perspective on the battleground. It does more than just add excitement. It shakes up your whole strategy.
It's not just about the vigors and skylines, though. It's the overall interface that sets Bioshock Infinite apart from other games. Andrew, how'd you find maneuvering between vigors and weapons?
I think it's overwhelmingly complicated at first, like a steep learning curve. But once I got the hang of it, constantly shuffling between vigors and weapons became instinctive. It felt natural and allocated for exciting combinations, reinforcing more strategic and dynamic gameplay.
And amidst this complexity, Bioshock Infinite does an amazing job of making the player feel involved. They've challenged typical linear gameplay, making it more flexible and open-ended. Just brilliant.
I think that's a pretty concise way to put it. The game indeed bends the norms, calling for gamers to adapt and perish, thereby making every battle, every encounter, an exhilarating experience. What really strikes me about Bioshock Infinite is its audacious use of religion and politics as central themes. It's a bold move for a video game, don't you think?
Absolutely, it's so daring. The game doesn't shy away from controversial conversations, and it introduces these themes right from the get-go.
We're introduced to the city of Columbia, a religious zealotry in the sky, a place where American exceptionalism is taken to an extreme.
It's as if they turned the social fabric of that era upside down. A brutal class division on full display, fanaticism, xenophobia, all fueled by religion and politics.
And the way they constructed the character of Comstock, a self-proclaimed prophet, Columbia's leader and essentially a villain. He's flawed, not a caricature.
Exactly. I think Bioshock doesn't stereotype or simplify its villains. It delves deeper. Comstock is driven by convictions that are abhorrent, yet he is sure of his righteousness. It presents immensely moral gray areas.
There's even the Vox Populi, the seemingly oppressed group that ends up being just as cruel as their oppressors. It complicates the narrative, doesn't it?
It's a jarring twist, forcing the player to question the dichotomy of good and evil. Again, Bioshock Infinite excels in these moral ambiguities. Andrew, how'd you perceive the game's presentation of these themes?
In my view, Bioshock Infinite doesn't endorse or celebrate these ideologies, rather exposes their darkest implications. It lays bare the corrosive power of extremism, be it political or religious.
Each character, each subplot is nuanced, laden with insights about societal issues and human nature. As a player, you're constantly navigating this tangled web of ideologies.
What's intriguing about Bioshock Infinite is it leaves the moral choices to the players. So Mia, let's delve deeper into this aspect. How does these morally driven choices add depth to the game's narrative?
Those hard choices, Andrew, immerse the player more in the narrative. For instance, in the lottery scene where you have to decide whether to throw a baseball at an interracial couple or the announcer. This is unsettling, yes, but it compels us to reflect.
That scene was definitely thought-provoking. There's no right choice per se. It's about what would you do in that situation. It's a dire commentary on racism and mob mentality, don't you think?
Definitely. It adds a level of gravity to the game, doesn't it? It immerses you deeper into the setting. The game doesn't pull its punches even when examining the dark sides of human nature.
Interesting point. I also recall the moment where you have to choose between the bird or the cage pendant for Elizabeth.
The choice seems trivial, doesn't it? But that innocuous decision takes on greater weight as you proceed. It's a metaphorical choice representing Elizabeth's struggle for freedom. Yet again, the game successfully establishes a deeper connection with the player.
Bioshock Infinite doesn't merely tell a story. It makes you a part of it. Whether it's navigating through social chaos or guiding Elizabeth's journey, profound choices permeate your gaming experience. Well, Mia, any closing thoughts here?
Bioshock Infinite is prime of gaming as an experience, not just entertainment. It forces us as players to glance within and question our notions of morality. Perhaps that's why it leaves such a lasting impression.
So, Mia, let's talk about the mind-bender of an ending. It makes use of the concept of quantum mechanics, of all things. We start seeing multiple universes, different timelines intersecting, leading us deeper into the rabbit hole. What do you think about this narrative choice?
Honestly, Andrew, I think it's a bold move. It's certainly not something you'd typically expect from a video game narrative. It's intricate and can be overwhelming, but that's what makes it so potent.
Overwhelming is right. Just when you think you've grasped the storyline, it takes a sharp, unexpected turn, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it gets really philosophical, posing questions about reality, fate, choice. All those lighthouses, representing infinite possibilities, infinite realities. A staggering concept, isn't it?
Staggering indeed. And amidst all this, we have our protagonist, Booker. In the end, he realizes that he himself is Comstock in another universe. Can you say identity crisis?
Oh, absolutely. It's a gut punch, forcing us to reassess everything we knew about him. But I must admit it gives a whole new layer to his character. It's tragic, extremely so, but also enlightening.
Tragic, enlightening, paralyzing even. Bioshock Infinite wasn't just a game, it was an experience, an exploration, one that tugged at your psyche, plummeted you into depths of despair and reflection, yet left you craving for more. Bioshock Infinite, in my opinion, has really elevated the standard of video game narratives. The game's intricate plot, the political and religious themes, the complex character arcs. We've never seen anything quite like it in the industry before. Do you agree, Mia?
I think it's fair to say that it paved the way for more ambitious and complex storytelling in games. It showed that games can not only be entertaining, but also provide a narrative experience that challenges the mind and explores heavy themes. However, I'd be curious if you can provide examples of how this has actually influenced other games.
Certainly some immediate examples that come to mind are games like The Witcher 3 or the Mass Effect series. The Witcher 3, for instance, boasts a rich, detailed narrative that examines various socio-political issues within its fantasy setting. And let's not forget the incredible character development throughout the game. Mass Effect also brings out a narrative filled with choice and consequence, echoing the narrative mechanics of Bioshock Infinite. While it's hard to say whether these games were directly influenced by Bioshock Infinite, there's no denying their shared attempts to push narrative boundaries.
It's fascinating to see how a game like Bioshock Infinite can have such a ripple effect on the industry. Not only does it show the potential of video games as a narrative medium, but it also provides a benchmark for future games to strive for.
Let's consider the impacts of Bioshock Infinite beyond game developers. Let's talk about the fans. With such a narrative complexity and bringing up provocative themes, it compelled players to engage deeper into the game's universe. Mia, have you found any fan theories or interpretations that are worth discussing?
Absolutely. The vast world of Bioshock Infinite sparked endless discussions and debates among fans. There was one particularly compelling theory about Elizabeth's role in expanding the multiverse. Fans speculated that she symbolizes the infinite possibilities within the multiverse because of her ability to manipulate and travel through tiers in the fabric of reality.
That fan theory aligns well with my perception of Elizabeth. I've observed another interesting perception among fans that Booker DeWitt's tragic journey of redemption resonated deeply with many players. Some fans found a cathartic connection with Booker's struggle, insightful and even inspirational in their real lives.
Providing inspiration, isn't it something? What's even more remarkable is how this game became a platform for bridging gaps and initiating discussions. For instance, because of the raw depiction of the political and religious tensions in the story, I've seen many online conversations about these heavy themes as a reflection on our own society. Again, the power of video game narrative, sparking debates and not shying away from difficult discussions.
Truly. And it's great the game community is capable of such thoughtful discourse. Besides the engaging fan theories, we cannot forget about the incredible fan art inspired by the game. The stunning cityscapes of Columbia, the heartbreaking bond between Booker and Elizabeth, or recreating the moment of choice between the bird or cage pendant, fan art became another way for the community to express their passion and connection with the game.
I adore those artworks. The connection between players and the game is honestly what makes Bioshock Infinite so special. It's not just a game, it's a piece of culture that has influenced the lives of so many players, provoking thoughts, expressions of creativity, and a sense of belonging.
Diving into the game design, I admit, Bioshock Infinite really did a phenomenal job balancing complexity and accessibility.
Definitely, yes. The details woven into the level design were absolutely remarkable. Thanks to the carefully thought-out pacing, anyone could appreciate the intricate nature of Columbia and the character's journey within it.
The vigor system and use of gear also accommodated both casual and advanced players. While you could opt for a straightforward combat approach, you could also use gear and mix and match vigors to gain an edge in battles.
But it wasn't just the mechanics, right? The visual design of the game was striking too. The city in the clouds definitely gave a floating essence. It was surreal and ethereal, and each scene felt carefully crafted. You could see the meticulous detailing put into every corner of Colombia.
Remarkably true. The same goes for the audible experience. You gotta admit, the sound design was superb. The hum of the city, the background music, the ambiance, it all contributed to the immersive world creation.
Oh, and the score was unique. It was unlike anything I've heard in a video game before. The way licensed music was incorporated, songs being converted into old-timey recordings, and that barbershop quartet singing God Only Knows, amazing.
Now that you mentioned it, I recall how that affected my emotions, adding depth to certain moments and enhancing the overall experience. The thoughtful harmony of video and audio design, I think, is a part of what elevated Bioshock Infinite above its contemporaries. Let's touch upon Bioshock Infinite's difficulty scaling. Could you believe how seamless it was?
Honestly, the scaling of difficulty was incredibly well balanced. Irrespective of player skill levels, it seemed like the game always managed to offer just the right amount of challenge.
Well, that's a striking point. The game doesn't punish you for not being an expert, but it still pushes you enough. It's interesting how this clever design choice fed into the narrative-centric nature of the game. Like, imagine getting repeatedly stuck at a combat sequence and failing to progress with the story. That'd be disappointing.
Yes, right? And something else that merits mention is how effectively this difficulty scaling was integrated with the game's upgrade systems. Investing in certain vigors or weapons could make a significant difference, but never to the extent of unbalancing the game.
So absolutely. I felt challenged but never overwhelmed. Each battle and each puzzle had a fair difficulty curve, and overcoming them felt satisfying. It's really uncommon to find such a perfect balance. Bioshock Infinite should be studied as a striking example of how to integrate an engaging storyline with a rewarding difficulty scale.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. Combining a rich narrative with an intuitive difficulty level effortlessly keeps the player wholly immersed in the plot. Each challenge was an opportunity for the player to discover more about the world, the characters, and even themselves. Bioshock Infinite wasn't just playing a game, it was living a story.
Experiencing it was nothing short of profound. From the moment I heard, "Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt," to the final revelation about Booker and Elizabeth, the game had succeeded in creating a perfect blend of narrative excellence and incredible gaming mechanics. Bioshock Infinite, to me, remains an unrivaled gem,